Welcome to Growth Strategies on Demand with AirDeck. This episode is about how to align and scale your sales through strategy, featuring Meghann Misiak, Associate Director of Go-to-Market Training at Movable Ink. What are the first steps to creating a strategy that works for your team?
In creating a sales strategy that works for your team, I recommend two critical steps. First, find the gaps. Second, find an expert who can help. Often when sales leaders approach me as a trainer, they're not sure where their true gaps are, only that the outcomes that they're seeing in terms of close rates and deal sizes and rep performance are not desirable and will not allow them to scale as a team. Finding the gaps is critical before you can think about how to solve them with a strategy. One of my favorite ways to do this is to implement a deal qualification framework within a pilot group of sellers and opportunities. This will allow you to objectively assess the areas of strength and weakness across your entire team instead of relying on sellers telling you why deals are not closing, which is incredibly subjective and may not be giving the true gap. I use a deal scorecard based on the MEDDIC framework that deeply assesses each opportunity through a standard set of questions, including things like, tell me about the goals that you've uncovered for this organization. Are they director level or are they user level? Have you actually tied each solution to one of their critical goals? What about the signatory? Do you know who will be signing the deal and what level of engagement do you actually have with this individual? And of course, pain. Have you not only identified compelling business pain, but have you quantified the impact of that pain and identified a compelling event in the next 6 months that will actually drive urgency for this opportunity? By asking this question in a standard way, this will allow you to understand not only where you're already strong and may not need as much training, but also where each rep and your team as a whole can improve. This is a great example of leveraging an expert who can help you assess before you solve, and it's a great investment you can make in your team's strategy and ultimate success. So to reiterate, find the gaps before you can then find an expert who can help, or find someone who can do both.
How long should you test a strategy before you know if it really works?
As a sales trainer, I hear this objection far too frequently. 2 years ago, we tried to roll out a strategy and it just didn't work. No one's using it, no one's heard it again, and we don't know what went wrong. So in thinking about how to roll out a strategy successfully and how long we should test it before knowing if it's effective or ineffective, I think about two core concepts: customization and testing. My favorite way to test a strategy is actually not testing it with the full team initially. In order to increase that likelihood of a strategy being successful, I recommend testing and customizing for at least 1 quarter before rolling out to the broader team. This will do a few things. It will help you work out the kinks, and it will increase buy-in, which will lead to more adoption. We know that no strategy is perfect, and especially with sales teams that are often incredibly skeptical, including myself, this is where strategies fall apart. If you don't take the time to test the strategy and to work out those kinks proactively with a diverse pilot group, then the strategy can fall apart in as little as 3 to 6 months. And you've wasted an enormous amount of time, effort, and money. So in thinking about who you should be rolling this out with initially in that diverse pilot group, I recommend pulling in people like the most skeptical person on your team who will help you handle all of those questions that will come up. The most eager person on your team that will be willing to try new strategies, being creative. The highest performing person on your team who will ensure that everyone else adopts it. And a few more junior people to bring in some of those nuances. Those in your main territory or market, and those in more challenging markets. This will not only allow you to work out those kinks, which are often nuances related to market, territory, and experience level, but it also will help you dramatically increase buy-in and adoption. Imagine if instead of you rolling out a strategy and your team having a million questions and you see their skeptical faces, Imagine them, before you even roll it out, hearing the buzz from those pilot users, and when you roll it out, seeing initial win stories, and even hearing win stories from some of the highest, most respected people on your team. And seeing that you as a leadership team have proactively handled a lot of their objections and nuances. If you think about all these things together, then your strategy is much more likely to be adopted and ultimately successful long term. But once you test for a quarter, it doesn't stop there. I recommend additional testing, feedback, and iteration for at least 2 quarters to make sure that once you roll it out to the broader teams, you're still solving nuances and making sure you're honing that strategy and making it the most successful and effective that it can be. A solid rollout strategy is key to this. You should be regularly seeking out feedback from those teams. We actually even host sessions monthly where we review any deals that we're using in play. We're also bringing in people who have struggled with the strategy to help us understand why. Then we as a leadership team and anyone else involved are making updates and improvements and sharing those things with team members to make sure they see that we're solving the gaps. And most importantly, you're sharing win stories and also the challenges with your team so that everyone can work through them together. By following these steps, you should not only increase the success of the strategy, but more importantly, you can see more immediate results, which is ultimately what we're all after. To give you a quick example, I worked with a cross-functional team to roll out a deal qualification framework last October. So our Q4, the biggest quarter in our year. We tested the strategy for a full quarter, we customized it, and we got it to even 99% accurate in terms of expecting deal health and if a deal would actually close. Once we rolled it out to the broad team, by the end of that quarter, we saw year-over-year increase in close rates for Q4 of 36%. If you can imagine, we blew our goals out of the water and our board was incredibly happy. And we've continued to use this strategy, which has helped us find a lot of success and, of course, protect our revenue during 2020, which is one of the most challenging years on record.
What are the steps to transforming an entry-level BDR into a successful senior seller?
Growing people from a BDR who may have just graduated college into a quota-carrying sales rep who is going to President's Club, who is blowing their numbers out of the water, and feeling really confident in their future career in sales. But I hear all of the time that this is such a critical challenge for sales teams. And I know that because it's one of the most requested things that I speak about. So I think really where sales teams struggle is that they only teach BDRs how to be BDRs. What I mean by that is that you enable them with sales tools and scripts from marketing and promise them that there's a path to AE, but you really don't know how that's going to happen. Why this falls flat is that BDR skills are wildly different from AE skills. By only teaching your BDRs how to be BDRs, you're not only hurting them by decreasing the likelihood that they will succeed in the AE role, but you're also missing out on the immense value that sales teams see when they enable their BDR teams to be more strategic. More strategic BDRs equals getting into larger accounts, better cross-functional alignment between like sales, CX, and marketing, and more support for your sellers, which is a win-win. There are 4 key ways that I help grow BDRs. Challenge them, train them, give them a path, and be okay when that path doesn't include a career in sales. So digging into these a bit more specifically, when I think about challenging BDRs, I want to not only challenge them, but also challenge our conventional beliefs about what a BDR can and cannot do. We challenge our BDRs to think beyond scripts and to be truly strategic in how they leverage resources to generate interest. We challenge them to form strategic relationships across the organization and to get involved in the sales process beyond prospecting. This all may sound incredibly counterintuitive because BDRs are generally gold and compensated based on meetings booked. and opportunities generated. But what we found is by challenging them to do more within the sales process, it actually increases their ability not only to hit quota and book meetings with top tier organizations, but again, it increases their likelihood that they will be interested and will be successful in the next role as well. And if you think about the challenge of BDR teams in terms of motivation and burnout, this can be incredibly important. The second thing is that challenging them will only end up in frustration if you're not training them how to succeed within those more strategic initiatives. We challenge our BDRs to not only complete the initial onboarding training, but to regularly seek out opportunities for training on the next role. We have monthly trainings with our BDRs on topics such as how to help your rep with meeting follow-up, how to introduce yourself to clients as an important part of the sales process, how to talk to your sales rep about presenting part of a sales meeting. While we do have scripts for a lot of these questions, they typically are focused on discussion, win stories, and exercises that require critical thinking. In my experience, scripts breed stupid reps. And for BDRs, you need them thinking critically from day one. Once you have challenged them and trained them, you need to make sure that you have a realistic path. You need to get them thinking about and practicing the sales skills that they'll need before they interview for that AE position. And to do so, you need to actually list out what those skills are and let BDRs know how they can improve. In doing so, you'll increase the ability to easily ramp in the role. By offering our BDRs trainings on discovery before they go into that AE position, we've had some amazing results. They not only get the chance to try out if they like those aspects of the role within a lower pressure environment, it also decreases the learning curve once they actually carry a quota. By following all the steps above, we were able to increase the interest in the AE role significantly within our large BDR team, but we also increased the average amount that sales reps sold within their first quarter from 0 when I started to 21,000 on average within the very first 3 months in the role. But lastly, it's critical to recognize when a BDR might be interested in a career that does not include sales, and making sure that you're enabling them just as you would someone who is interested in the AE role. Our BDR team has produced some of the most successful employees across the organization, including members of the product team, very senior client experience teams, the RevOps team, and even the partnerships team. You need to be transparent around what roles are available with the organization and give opportunities for BDRs to explore all of those roles and even mentor people in those roles currently to make them really comfortable. And remember that by up-leveling the success of your BDRs and the strategic thinking, you're not only preparing them for a stellar career in sales, but any role within the organization.
Lastly, what challenges do teams face when scaling their process, and how can they overcome them?
As someone who specializes in sales training and enablement, this is what keeps me up at night, literally. Common challenges with scalability include higher rep turnover if you're hiring quickly, inability to grow reps from role to role, so from BDR to seller or from seller to senior seller, lack of accuracy and consistency in your forecast, failed launches of strategies, which we've talked about before, meaning low adoption, lack of consistency in utilization, and overall lack of transparency in how the strategy and sales teams are doing as a whole. When I think about scalability, I think of a few key areas: motivation, methodology, tools, and teams. I start with motivation because if no one is motivated to follow the process or strategy, it doesn't matter how easy it is or how much you hold people accountable to it. It will fall flat, or reps will find a way around it. Focus on the why. And as mentioned earlier, by testing a strategy in advance with a specific audience, you can automatically increase the buy-in and the likelihood that everything else you do to support the strategy will actually work. Next is methodology, my personal favorite. Your sales team needs to be speaking the same language, following the same process, and understanding exactly what is expected. If you don't have a common sales process in place, you can't really blame them for lack of consistency or performance. This is typically where I start with organizations and can be one of the most effective ways to set yourself up for rapid growth and performance. Next are tools. Tools can make a huge difference in the effectiveness, adoption, and scalability of your team, as well as all of your strategies. As a one-person team, I leverage tools constantly and am always staying up to date on the best tools in the market. Tools can have a huge impact on the way that you actually roll out strategies and methodologies, the way that you test their effectiveness, the way you hold reps accountable to leveraging them, as well as, again, recognizing where reps are struggling in either utilizing a process or a solution. And finally, just making sure that you're on track with the goals and the metrics that you have set for that specific strategy. Currently, one of my favorite tools is Gong.io, or Chorus, very comparable tool, which is conversation intelligence. So a quick way that this has impacted our team. My previous organization, when I was about 2 years in, and I thought I had done a great job bringing the average time to first deal closed from 6.5 months to 3.5 months. But after implementing a conversation intelligence tool and working it into every single part of the onboarding process, the first person to go through that new onboarding process enabled with conversation intelligence listened to about 50 calls the first week, which seems insane. This rep closed a $110,000 deal within the first 4 weeks. Now, my current organization, we leverage these tools for almost every part of our business, from launching new products to really coaching our teams to be more successful, and even to interview clients and hear what's working in the field and with the product. So these can be some great examples of how to leverage tools to roll out new strategies, roll out new products, and of course to increase rep effectiveness and decrease ramp time. The final thing I want to mention is, if you're not investing in tools, maybe you're a really small company, or regardless of you're using everything else, you need to make sure that you're investing and supporting your teams. You need to ensure that you have first the right people in place. This is something you'll definitely want to think about if you're a high growth organization. You also want to make sure that you're supporting those people once you have them in place. Sometimes the best person for the job in years 1 through 3 is not the best person for years 5 through 10, and that's all right. What you want to ensure is that you're either investing in your team's skill set and constantly improving that skill set, or you're constantly assessing and adding people to your teams in order to scale and to make sure that you are actually set up for the growth that you're planning. So again, 4 key elements. You need to make sure that you are motivating your team and supporting all of these strategies. Everyone knows what the plan is for growth and scalability. You're supporting that growth with the right methodology. You're bringing the tools in place to support every aspect of that rollout and your team, and you have the right team in place.
Thank you to our guest on this week's episode. If you want to be featured, contact sales@airdeck.co with a brief explanation of why you think you'd be a good fit for the series. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Growth Strategies webinar series brought to you by AirDeck. Stay tuned for more episodes coming soon, featuring top sales and marketing professionals around the world.